Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In this video we will do a simple exercise of styling a form. So let us go right inside our CSS folder and create a new folder and name it as exercise-1 styling form in CSS. And now inside this folder let us create two new files, index.html and styles.css. So let us head over to our index.html file. Now in order to create a basic HTML boilerplate, type exclamation and press tab. So styling a simple form using CSS. Now right here let us link our styles.css file, to which I will add a couple of styles in just a few minutes. Now let us quickly lay down the structure of our form, just the bare bones for now. So form, and let us remove this action attribute. So first we need an h3 and let us give this a class of form heading, registration. Then we need two input fields. So first is type email, placeholder, enter the email, then input of type password, and let us add a placeholder, enter the password. Next let us add a div with the class of button actions, and inside this let us add a button which says register. So right here let us first load up a Google font for HTML file. So head over to Google Fonts and grab the CDN for one of the custom Google fonts that you want to use. So let us go with Railway, though feel free to use any font of your choice. So let me add an import right here. So here I am using the import CSS rule and we are loading up this font. So Railway. So now our custom font is loaded. Now as the next step, let us set up our base styles for our HTML file. So for this, let us make use of our universal selector that is represented using asterisk. So this selector is used to select all the elements that we define on our HTML page. So essentially we want to apply some base styles to the elements of our page. So let us quickly define these base styles. Let us first set the margin to 0, padding to 0, font family, Railway, sans serif. Next, let us set the box sizing property to border box. I did cover the topic of sizing of elements in one of my videos. The link for the same can be found down below. So by setting box sizing to border box, we are saying that please include the padding and border in the width and the height of the elements that we have on our HTML page. Make sense? Next, for adding some CSS variables, let us target the HTML element. So for this, let us make use of the root pseudo class selector. So right here let us define a CSS variable and let us name it as first. So hyphen first, and set this to some color. So let us use the hex code 7EBBB1CB6. Next let us set up the background for HTML page, but before that let me run this file with the live server, and let me place this to the left of our screen and our editor to the right hand side of our screen. So let us target the body element, and I want a radial gradient that is at the center of its container. So background radial gradient, so circle at center. Now I want starting with purple, so RGBA, let us use this 176 63 251 and opacity of 0%. Now starting from purple and changing to moderate pink. So for moderate pink I can say RGBA 217 65 128 and 183%, and finishing dark pink. So for dark pink RGBA 255 58 98, and for opacity at 100%. Okay, so right here. Next let us set up the display property for the body element to flex. Now we know that flex direction by default has a value of rho, which means that the horizontal axis represents our main axis and the vertical axis represents our cross axis. So to control the alignment of items on the cross axis, we can make use of the align items CSS property, and let us set this to center. Now to control the alignment of items along the main axis, we can make use of the justify content CSS property. So justify content, and let us set this to center. And lastly, let us give the body a height of 70 viewport height. So height 70 VH. So this is how it looks. Currently it looks horrible, but we will get there, no worries. Next, let us work on styling our form. So for styling our form, we first have to target our form element, and let us give this a width of 400 pixels, a margin of 0 top and bottom, auto left and right. Next, let us give some room to the elements of our form. So for this, let us give the form a padding of 30 pixels. Next, let us set up the box shadow on our form. So 1 pixel, 2 pixel, 3 pixel, RGBA 50, 50, 50 and 0.87. Next, let us give our form a background color of white, background white. Next, let us style our h3 element which says registration. So for this, let us target the h3 element by its class. So dot form heading, and give this a font size of 25 pixels. And then to center the text, let us set the text align property to center. Next, let us target our input fields. So for the input fields, we don't want these rectangular boundaries. So input. So in order to remove them, all we have to do is to set the border property to none. And now you can see the rectangular boundary for the input fields is now gone. Now currently we are far away from our final styles, but we will soon get there. So next, let us set the border bottom property for our input fields. So border bottom 1 pixel solid, and let us use the CSS variable here. So var function, and here we specify the variable. So first, so now you can see a thin green line, that is our bottom border for our input fields. Next, let us give a padding of 10 pixel all around to our input boxes. So padding 10 pixel. So now this is starting to take shape. Next, we have this line around our input elements, this black one that represents the outline of our input box. So we need to remove it. So for this, all we have to do is to set the outline property to none. So outline, set this to none. Now if I select the input field, you can see it is gone. Next, let us set the display property to block for our input element and give it a width of 100%. So display, set this to block and width of 100%. Finally, to make it a bit better, let us add a margin 20 pixels top and bottom, auto left and right. So this is how our form now looks. Now currently you can see our button is not there in the center. So to center it, all we have to do is to set the text align property to center for the container that holds the button. So to target the container, we can use the class button actions and set the text align property to center. Now to make this old century button to appear a bit better, let us target our button and set a border radius of 8 pixels to soften its corners. Next, let us set the border for our button to none. Next, let us give the button some room, so give it a padding of 8 pixels top and bottom and 12 pixel left and right. So now it is starting to look a lot better. Next, let us set the text color for the button to white. Now currently the word register is hard to notice. So to make sure that we can see it, let us set the background color to black. So background color, set this to #000. Next, let us set the font weight property to a value of 600. So font weight, so that the button looks a bit bolder. Next, to get a pointed cursor when the user hovers over the button, let us set the cursor CSS property to pointer. So now you can see we are getting this cursor when we hover over the button. Now finally, let us set the outline property for the button to none. So now the styling part of our form is complete. Now what I would like to do is that once someone clicks on the button, I want to give it some shine effect to the button. So for that, let me first set up a couple of properties that I will animate in just a few minutes. So first, let us set the background repeat property for the button to no-repeat. Next, let us set the background position property, background position, to -120 pixels, -120 pixel, 0, 0. So here the first value represents the X value and the second value represents the Y value. Remember that 0, 0 represents the top left corner of our button. So -120 pixel, -120 pixel will be some background position that is 120 pixel to the left of that top left corner of our button and 120 pixel up of that top left corner position. Make sense? Next, let us set up the background image for the button as a linear gradient. So background image, linear gradient. So we set the background image property to an invocation of the linear gradient function. And as the first argument, let us give this a value of 0, 0, which represents the top left corner of the button. It is at this point that our animation will start. Next, we need to define a smooth transition of colors, and here I will define some checkpoints. So at 0%, let us give a grayish color, so RGBA, 255, 255, 255, and an opacity of 0.2. And let me copy this and paste it right here. So change this checkpoint to 37%. Then again paste this. Change the opacity to 0.8 and 45%. And finally at 50%, an opacity of 0. Now let me copy this and paste it down below. And here let us set this to WebKit linear gradient. So this is basically for Chrome, and then Moz for Mozilla Firefox, and finally for Opera. So -O-. Now I'm setting these properties just because the linear gradient property might not be compatible with all the versions of browsers that are out there. Now let us set the background size to 250%, 250%, 100%, 100%. And this I need to define for the Firefox versions as well. So -Moz-. Next, let us define a transition property to show a smooth transition of the background position property over a certain duration. So for this, let us set the transition property to the property that we want to animate, which is background position. Next, we need to specify the initial transition duration. So for the start, let us keep it as 0 seconds. And lastly, we need the transition timing function. So let us set this to ease, and let me copy this and paste it down below a couple of times. So do this for WebKit, Moz, and -O-. So currently you can see it does nothing. So let us bring the shine effect to life. So for this, we first need to target for the hover state of the button. So for the hovered state of our button, let us set the background color to dark purple. So background #21094E. So if I now hover over this button, you can now see that it gets this purple color. Now let us set the background position to 0, 0. To set the background image that we define on the button to the top left corner and give this a transition duration of 0.35 seconds. So with this in place, let us give this a whirl, and you can see it doesn't work. So what we need to do here is that for the WebKit linear gradient, here we need to specify top and left for the top left corner, right? And let us again give this a whirl, and you can see now this works. So in this video, we learned how we can style a form using CSS, and we also implemented a transition on our form button. So this shine effect. So in the next video, we will create a simple image gallery using CSS grids, which will be our next exercise for this course. So see you in the next one.